My name is Jason Parham, and I'm a producer on Black Twitter at People's History.
I'm Joey Jacoby. I'm an executive producer and showrunner on Black Twitter, People's History.
I'm Prentice Penny, a director and producer of Black Twitter, People's History, which is a docuseries based on Jason's article that was in Wired magazine, sort of tracking the rise and the power and the realization of what Black Twitter was. I was actually approached by Sarah Amos and the group at Condé Nast about directing the docuseries, which obviously for me was a change of pace coming from a narrative space. But Black Twitter was something that I engaged in a lot, obviously as a participant, and got to see the sort of rise of it. And it sort of reminded me of the way my mother talks about the civil rights movement, where this sort of movement of Black people and Black culture sort of rising on a platform and sort of holding the country accountable. And I felt Jason's article was sort of making that point so clearly, and it just made me fall in love with Black Twitter again. And I felt like that was just sort of driving me to want to kind of do like a love letter and honoring that as a docuseries. So that's sort of where it came from.
There were two different points for me. Like, there's the pop cultural part of it where when I was like, oh shit, this is a thing. Like, I need to be on here and like, so I know what's cool and what's funny. And like, and one of those moments for me was Zola, when everybody was like, the timeline was hot, and I was like, okay, like, this is a thing. This is hilarious. This is like, I think Van is like, this is like Shakespeare. Like, what the? So I was super engaged, and I was like, this is amazing. There's no other place where a conversation, a storytelling situation can be happening in real time, and we're all sort of experiencing it at the same time. So that was like on that side. And then I would say, in terms of like the power on a political level, for me was Trayvon, and when that happened, that was the only space at first where it was being talked about in the significant way that it was going to affect all of our lives, and that it was the only space where folks were saying they need to arrest this man that killed this boy. This was before the news was covering it and all of those spaces. So, but it didn't really turn into, for me, a political movement until Ferguson. And so that's when I could not take my eyes off of Black Twitter. That was when I was, super engaged, very upset, very angry. But it was my lifeline to understanding what was happening on the ground. And I was like, this is different. Yeah. Like, this is something I've never seen before, where, similar to like the Arab Spring on Twitter as well, where you were just like, this is how you're going to find out what's going on. So for me,
that was definitely the turning point for Black Twitter, the Black Lives Matter movement, when you see the platform growing up, in a sense, from its sort of infancy, adolescence, when everybody was just on there in the beginning, 2009, coming out of college, millennials looking for a place to connect, and, shooting out hashtags, meet me in Temecula, Thanksgiving clapback, and then Ferguson happens, and it's like, oh, we actually have to use our platform in a more responsible way. Like, we have these voices, and we need to use them out there and put purpose into the world.
Mm-hmm.
I think Black Twitter, to me, is the perfect way also, too, that Black people communicate in real life, right? Mm-hmm. So there's the part of it that becomes like a place to get jokes together, right? It becomes a place to also feel like a group chat and talk gossip with each other. It's also a place to say, hey, this thing happened to me. It's a place to feel comfort when things are like feel communally are hurting all of us, even if it didn't happen immediately to us. And then it also has the part about Black people. It also has the part about Black culture and Black people that say, okay, but we got to do something now, right? Mm-hmm. And it does all of those things. It's almost just like this sort of very public group chat, right? And there's this sort of, I think of a feel of, okay, even individually about where we're from, I might not have a lot of power being the Black person who lives in Indianapolis or whatever, the small, but collectively, digitally, we do, right? And I feel like that is the voice in which Black Twitter and Black culture sort of moves, and that's what I felt you were seeing on the platform.
Mm-hmm. I would say the experience of being Black in America is one where you hold so many things at the same time. Yeah. You can be sad and you can laugh at the same, like you have to. And so it's absolutely a reflection of us. Yeah. And the idea that when we're experiencing Black death on the timeline, we're also seeing some crazy, some meme that like makes us chuckle and gives us a little levity and feel better. So in all, like in this series, you know, we're really like even when we're going into some things darker, like there it is a celebration of us, and so I feel like you feel that throughout.
I mean, that's black folks inherently. It's like no matter
Yeah.
how bad it is, we're always gonna get a joke off, no
Yeah.
matter what.
Got to.
And I think too, it's like, and as Joey was saying, I think black culture in America kind of has to deal with life with the lens of a comma on the end of things, right? Whereas I feel like it'll be like, yeah, this horrible thing happened to me, but comma, I gotta go still pay my bills, right? Like, so there is this level, like, it's not like, oh, that's wrong, period. Like, oh, I'm gonna do something about it. It's like, no, that's wrong, comma, but I gotta still take my kids to school. You know what I mean? Like, so there's always this comma to whether it's a triumph or a tragedy to all of it. And I think that is how Black Twitter moves. It's like, this is bad, comma, but we're gonna do this, or we're gonna do that, or we have to figure this out. So I think that's the way black people move. And I feel like you were seeing that on Black Twitter, whether this is horrible, but here's a joke. This is horrible, but here's some empathy. This is horrible, but here's some whatever. Like, just to make it through.
Yeah.
I think a part of it felt like, obviously there's the sort of normal parts of a doc that are like the people sitting and talking to camera, right? But we also wanted to be like, how do we continually to make this feel like Black Twitter, right? And there's an energy to how Black Twitter feels, right? And Jason talks about, like, basically like Black Twitter is like being on the stoop, right? Or being in the quad in college, right? And there's just sort of like, we're just hanging and talking, right? So visually, how do we represent that, right? And so for us, it was creating these sort of kickbacks around the energy of that, of just sort of a big, fun kickback conversation. And so to include that visually was super important. To be like, oh, that's representative of, and also feeling like these are everyday people, right? Because Black Twitter isn't just made of the Meredith Clarks of the world, or the Wesley Lowrys of the world, or the people, or the Amanda Seals of the world, or the Jamil Hills of the world, who are obviously, you know, people who people know, right? But it's also made up of like random everyday people as well, who kind of do something kind of interesting on the platform or just participate. And so for us, it was also making sure those voices were represented in the doc as well.
When you think about the
I mean, I think that's always the question. It's like, where are black people migrating to next online? But I think it's what's true in the past is also what's true in the future. Twitter was never a space for us, but we came here and we showed up and we show out. And I think that's going to be true going forward with whatever gets built next. I think, though, now black folks are coming more and more into power, into digital realms and digital spaces. So we have more ownership of what that looks like. But no matter what, we're going to show up, show up where the party's at.
Yeah, I almost feel like Black Twitter is almost, whether or not like the platform exists, and obviously it doesn't exist in the same way it did as it once did, but I think regardless, the Black Twitter energy to me is outside of the platform now, right? I think Black Twitter almost comes synonymous with like revolution or just accountability, right? Like I've had friends of mine say stuff like, ooh, Black Twitter gonna get you for that, even though we're not even on Twitter talking, right? It's just like the energy of a group of people that are gonna hold your feet to the fire if you do something, right? And I love that we're no longer bound. I kind of equate it to like Neo when he learns to fly in the Matrix. You're like, oh, I'm no longer bound by the rules of this, right? I'm past that. And I feel like that's what Black Twitter is, a bigger energy than what it was.
Yeah, and you're just like everything else, you're going to find black folks on the internet wherever it's popping. Like so we're on TikTok, and we'll see about Threads. There's Spill. There's all of these other things that are going to happen, and we're always going to find each other. And that's also what I think our show is about too. Is like we want to find each other. We want community. We want to be with each other, and so that will happen digitally, wherever people are on the internet, essentially.